Hello, my name's Seth Bates, and I'm going to be, this is my oral report for Mr. Lenning's class, and today I'm going to be discussing cinemas in the form of Disney, and how they aren't really appear what they intend to be like, because in the world of Disney, they're kid movies, there's this message that's obvious, and it's like a happy ending, the cliche movie. But what my literature review, what I talk about in it, is kind of the fact that that's not what he was going for. Well, I mean, that's what he is, but he was throwing in subliminal hidden messages in there to each movie. And there's numerous movies that he did that are actually have these hidden meanings, and they're kind of dark and twisted, but that's what made that kind of says something about who Walt Disney was and why he did that in his movies. And there's countless numbers of reasons why he did it. There's many theories in the world of Disney that can be said on those movies. And at first glance, when watching these movies, like a little child wouldn't see the hidden messages, but as he gets older, he starts to realize what Walt Disney was trying to put out to make these movies. Some of these movies you would never thought to have a dark perspective from them, but now you can't, once you see it, you can't unsee it, is the thing. From Frozen to Aladdin to Cars to even Peter Pan, you can say that Disney was trying to spread a message for a lot of us that most of us fail to see. Most of this reaches into a political perspective. Some movies showing destruction and what the world may come to in the future, although nobody knows that for sure. But it makes you think that it's being hidden from us from the sources we don't know what information they may be holding. It is the whole movie with some exactly, but what little parts here and there that will make you think to yourself, why I'm letting my children watch this? This is way worse than what I thought to be. Let's go back to Walt Disney's past, where he grew up, when he was born, and all that. What contributed to maybe him, why he made the movies the way he did. Walt Disney was born December 5th, 1901 in Hermosa, Illinois. He actually moved a lot as a kid, going to a railroad and during the summer and selling snacks and newspapers to people. That was in his free time. He did that over the summer because his family, he worked for a railroad company, so he had to travel with them. So he was constantly on the move. And later, Disney attended McKinley High School in Chicago, where he took drawing and photography classes and was a contributing cartoonist for the school paper. And at night, he took courses at the Chicago Art Institute. When Disney was actually 16, he dropped out of school to join the Army, but was rejected for being underage. Instead, he joined the Red Cross and was sent to France for a year to drive an ambulance. He moved back to the U.S. in 1919, where him and his brother created their first cartoon in a newspaper. That was led to his illustrious career of being a Disney movie maker. And if you ask me, moving from time to time, not being able to buckle down, make friends as he'd like to, or live the normal life as a normal kid would want, that was good and bad for him, I think. And it was good that without that, he wouldn't have been so successful as he was today. But I think that kind of left an impact on him, emotionally, in a depressed state, because he really, all he had was himself and his, the little family he had, so he was always on the move. And whenever he went to high school, the only thing he had besides that was the cartoons. And the photography and all that, like, his artsy side. So he grew one with his cartoon characters, and like they were more of like a companion or like a friend to him. So that'll do a lot on you if that's all you have. So I think that kind of contributed to his dark, um, some would say insane, but I wouldn't say that. More of like a deeper thought train of state, or train of thought to how he was and why he did that in his movies. Because he was more, you could say, intellectual, because he had it himself, so he had a lot of free time to think to himself. And whenever he dropped out of high school, he actually went to join the army and was rejected because he was underage. Instead, he joined the Red Cross and was sent to France for a year to drive an ambulance. So, in that time, having his goal as being in the army and not being able to do that just carried on to his emotional decline. And that's when he found his cartoon future, as in Disney Productions, after that happened. So I think that contributed negatively towards his mental state, but positively to his life goals, or his way his life went. And then later on, after he got in 1919, working for the newspaper, doing cartoons, Freed Harben actually promoted him and gave him a screen series called Laugh-O-Grams, where later he would gain his own studio, and I think his studio was called Laugh-O-Grams, so that was just another stepping stone. And Disney and his brother Roy actually soon pooled their money to move to Hollywood, and iWorks was also relocated in California, and there was the three began the new Disney Brothers Studios, iWork, Roy, and Disney, where later on they had a famous character they created called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and there was this man named Winkler, and he had stolen the rights to Oswald, so Walt said, hey, I have to create somebody else new, and thus Mickey Mouse was born, creating a legacy of movies, and the rest is history on it. So let's get into where these movies actually correlate and what kind of meanings they have. Now, we don't know for sure if these theories are true, which is why they're called theories, but which is why they're merely theories that makes us think that Disney may be trying to subliminally tell us something. For example, one of the movies, Disney's Aladdin, most people think the film takes place in the future. Some people believe that Walt Disney is pointing in a different direction in the future. Some people believe it was just not like. Let me recap. Most people think the film takes place in the future, but some people believe that Walt was pointing at a different direction in the future. Maybe the story of Aladdin was set in a post-apocalyptic view, if you look at it that way. There's many examples and strong arguments that can argue on that. Like, why else in the movie would the genie complain that 10,000 years give you such a crick in the neck? That was a famous line. 10,000 years. That wasn't. 10,000 years before that, that couldn't take place in the past. 10,000 years, that's in the future. That all that time has passed and make it be in the future. And it makes so much more sense if you look at it from that perspective on the film being made 10,000 years in the future. There's a hovercraft technology and animal testing that resulted in birds talking. That can only be futuristic vibes. And Aragabay, just a fictional place, or is it in the name of the few cities still standing after a huge nuclear fallout? That was one of the only cities standing in the movie. And there's a bunch of examples and many reasons why you would think why that movie took place in a post-apocalyptic future. and those are a couple of the reasons. And when he made the movie of Aladdin, that wasn't the intentions that everybody saw, but I believe, and there's so many strong arguments that say that's why Disney did that, and that's what he was shooting for, was more of a kind of a hidden message in that. Kind of, he was saying that in so many ways that this is where we're going to be if we don't kind of clean up our act and do what needs to be done, because the way our society was going and the way life was heading in that time, we were going to be in it was going to be an apocalyptic future, and there wasn't going to be much of civilization at all. And I think that was why he put that in the movie, not to make it obvious, to make it known, though. There's people that see it would say, hey, maybe we do need to change something and do need to change the way we're living, or else we're going to end up in this post-apocalyptic society. Not true, I'm not saying it's true, but it's a theory. Another film that actually stands out for its dark side is none other than Peter Pan. This one's actually my favorite theory from the group. The original Peter Pan movies, you say Peter Pan's a magic fairy going to Neverland. It's the place you always want to go. Not what Walt Disney was going for. He was going for more of a dark side. Like I've said before many times, most of his meanings in these movies are really dark. Maybe he wasn't a magic fairy that took kids to Neverland, but an angel that took the kids to heaven. Many kids love Peter Pan and what he does, but the ironic truth is you wouldn't want Peter Pan anywhere near your kids, because he's none other than the Grim Reaper himself. He takes the kids to Neverland, which is actually heaven in the theory, and they're dead. That's why they can't grow up, because it's Neverland. You don't age when you go to heaven. He's the Grim Reaper. He takes them to heaven because they died. The Lost Boys are the boys that never grow up. Very well could be because they are dead and cannot age. This source comes from Mastro J.M. Barrie, actually, who often read his books to terminally ill kids who wouldn't be afraid of dying. It makes sense if you ask me. So, in conclusion to that, one side there's Peter Pan the good Neverland boy who takes them to the place they always wanted to go. Other side there's the angel. He takes them to heaven because they've died. Another theory, but another building block to what and if Disney really made these meanings behind these movies. And there's a bunch of other movies that fit into this category, like Pinocchio. He got tortured for his bad behavior, eventually being hung in the original Pinocchio. Or Beauty and the Beast, where the Beast actually eats the Beauty alive. And the point, there are countless Disney movies that have been revised for the viewing of a child, but it makes you think as we get older, what did Walt Disney really have in mind? He made these movies for two reasons, I believe. One, for the intent of a child to enjoy it, and from a simplistic view, but as you get older, the other side of it, he made it for the older people to see what he was really going for. We may not know why, but that was why he did it, or if that was what he did. All these other Disney movies have some sort of ulterior motive, and most of us don't catch it. Some may argue that all these dark messages were intentional, but there are too many to argue that. Almost every Disney movie that has a dark side to it, it's just a matter of if we can catch it or not. Although we do not know exactly why Walt Disney put these messages in all his movies. Maybe he was deeply disturbed, or maybe he was just trying to get across a message to show the people the truth of being settled, so the media wouldn't catch him and get him in trouble for it, because if he got in trouble by the media, that would hurt his reputation and kill his career, and they would say, hey, maybe this guy's crazy. So he had to do it in a more hidden, under the radar kind of way to get his message across, say, hey, this is what we need to do to change what we're doing, or else our society's going to be destroyed. In one way you look at it, or this is what the true reality is. There's a heaven and death is a real thing, but I'm not going to say that in the form of Peter Pan. I'm only going to make him a good Neverland kind of guy who brings him there, but as you get older you say, hey, maybe that was another meaning behind that, you know? We don't know for sure why he made these movies, but he did. And it can only prove one thing, that he cared about our children. I know that sounds bogus. Why would a man put gloomy and even sexual references in children's movies? To show them, for one reason, to show them early what the world is. Because if they find out later and they've been sheltered their whole life, they get to be 18 and then they realize what a sexual thing is, or death is, or anything like that, they're going to be devastated. They're going to be like, whoa, my whole life has been a lie because I don't know what that is. Most kids do know what that is, but maybe he was making them with the intentions that they didn't know, and he wanted them to know about it. But he didn't want to put it in a obvious, parents don't let your kids watch this kind of way, just kind of like hidden stuff here and there that showed the kids like, oh, maybe what is that? I'll start thinking about it, and got their brains turning, and in time they say, hey, my mommy, daddy, what is that? And they wouldn't tell them then, obviously, but later they would research it and find out what it is, and they know young instead of growing up having a more thoughtful, complex mind and then scarring them in a way. Most people don't see it that way. Most people don't see it the way kids do. Most adults are used to seeing people die or religious scenery in movies, but kids aren't, which is a reason why he did that. He includes these scenes, some more obvious than others, to show the kids that life isn't always happy-go-lucky. From The Little Mermaid example, dying by turning into sea foam is a good example. It wasn't a gory death to scare young kids, but just enough to make it real for them, to get them thinking about what death is, or where does she go? Some may argue that this was wrong of him to do this. He should have just made the movies 100% kid-friendly. For the most part they are, but some obviously aren't. And these are many theories of why Disney movies contain the subliminal messages. The main reason I believe they do is because Walt Disney knew something we didn't, and he was trying to spread a message without getting in trouble, like I stated before, with the media or anything like that. Not only with the media, but even the government. When talking about the world, what the world will be like if we keep doing what we're doing, some people will think you're crazy. But if you don't directly say it and put it in the audience, put it so the audience can visually see it, it gets them thinking if this really is a possibility. And if the government found out he was doing that, saying, hey, get people to break away to how we want them to live and how we're running this world, or states or country or anything, if he comes out and just says that, they're going to be onto him, and he's going to be wiped off the map, or something could happen to him on accident or anything like that. So with that in mind, he made these movies with the message of, hey, I want to get this message out to people, but I don't want it to be so obvious I get in trouble in the process, because the government, no matter what you do, they want you to live by their laws and their code. And if people say, hey, because the government's slowly killing, not necessarily killing, they do so many things that are good, but a lot of the stuff they do is bad, in forms of they're making life a lot harder to live than if we just said, hey, you know what, we're not no government, we're just going to do things our own way, because they want a single file line type basis of a country, people like right in front of the other, in a single fashion. You're going to go this way and you're going to like it. And if Walt Disney tried to spread that message and stop them, they would do, if anybody did that, they would take action and say, hey, you're not going to do that anymore, or else there are going to be consequences, because this is our state, this is our country, we're going to run things how we want. If you don't like it, you can get out, or other consequences happen. So that's why he did that. He also throws a dark twist on some of his works that don't touch on the futuristic standpoint, but they are just disturbing in some points, like Beauty and the Beast, where Beast eats Beauty, or Tarzan when Clayton gets hung. All these movies may be more proof that why I believe that Walt Disney put these scenes in his movie to show us how advanced of his mind he actually has. That's the main point. He wanted to show us that, hey, I don't make just kids movies, I can do other stuff too. But he wanted to put it in a more complicated, complex mind view set to show us that I know what I'm talking about, but I'm making these kids movies because this is what I want to do. But I want to make both, almost. He wanted to show us that I'm more complex than you think I am. So this is why I'm going to put these subliminal, disturbing, sexual, you name it, type references in movies, because later on people would see it and say, hey, maybe he was more than just a kids entertainer. He was a intelligent man also. I believe he was onto something. Maybe he was putting in these messages and meanings and messages merely due to the fact that when he was dead and gone, his mind would be put to ease, because his messages of how he perceived the world and all the things that were going on in it as how they really are and tend to be if we don't make a change. And he wanted to put that into this cinema production, so when he was dead and gone, he wouldn't have any worries. His mind would be at ease, because he got his message that he was going for on screen without really putting it so obviously on the screen. Maybe he knew something or didn't. Maybe he knew someday someone would see these movies as how they really are and spread his word. Although maybe these were just his own theories he had come up with, and they are somewhat slowly becoming true. Let's face it. I mean, if the media and even the government found out he was trying to get across what he was trying to get across, Walt Disney wouldn't be Walt Disney anymore. He would just be a civilian casualty, because, let's face it, even with the whole Kanye West thing where he got on stage and spurted off the truth of what he thought and how he said his life was going, he disappeared. He had to go to a mental hospital because there was some force, maybe not the government, but maybe a group of people, somebody, something, that if you state the truth and how something really is plainly for everybody to see, there's consequences that happen. Illuminati. I don't know if it's real, but it's a possibility. I believe it's real, but Walt Disney he knew something was going to happen if he made it so obvious, so he put it into his movies with the hopes of maybe nobody will see it, because I'm not saying it directly, but it's there. And as Walt Disney, I'm going to end on this note. Walt Disney made these movies for 3 reasons: to get his message out, to help kids, show kids what life's really like, and to show how complex of a mind he had and wanted to slyly and slickly, in a more slick way, put his mind in his movies. But he couldn't do that with the track he was going on with his cartoons and kids theme. And Walt Disney is a huge character in society and has left a huge impact on how life is today and how we perceive movies and everything. And he was insane, but he was intelligent. They were made for a deeper message, and he truly left an impact on cinema's legacy as we know it. But for the good or for the bad, we don't know. Mostly for the, obviously it's for the good, but if you watch the movies and see all these hidden things here and there, it could be for the bad if you look at it that way. Walt Disney, one of my favorite movie makers and directors, and he is a huge influence and made these movies. Huge trailblazer. And I want to leave you on this note. As Walt Disney once said, I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that we are all started by a mouse. I'll let you think one thing before I end this. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it all started by a mouse. What he meant by that, in my opinion, was the good or the bad, the hidden messages or the plain to see, what he made and what he stands for. It all started by one simple character, Mickey Mouse. If Mickey Mouse could start a chain of movies and a huge milestone in cinema history, maybe we could do that too, by simply one little thing. We could change our lives or everybody's lives, whether that be smiling at somebody who's having a bad day, giving words of encouragement, or even picking up a pencil for somebody at school who dropped it. That could impact their day and even their life in more of a positive way than we could even dream and imagine. Because the little things we do, that's what makes the big impacts. Thank you.